You ready, Jared? All right. All right, we'll go ahead and call this Tooele City Planning Commission meeting to order this Wednesday, February 14th, 2024 at the hour of 7 p.m. here at City Council Chambers. I want to thank you all for attending and being my Valentine tonight. I appreciate it. I won't go home lonely. We'll start off with our Pledge of Allegiance, if you all please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, number 2 on our agenda is our roll call. Commissioner Hammer? Here. Commissioner Proctor? Here. Commissioner Sloan? Here. Commissioner Robinson? Here. Commissioner Jensen? Here. Commissioner Anderson? Here. I am Chairman Hamilton. I am also here. We'll recognize Commissioner Dunn in the back as well. Our minutes taker is not here tonight, so please speak your name before you decide to respond. Council members Manzione and Hansen, thank you for coming tonight, and then staff members Hall and Agard. Did I miss anybody? Okay, good. Number 3 on our agenda is a public hearing and recommendation. It's a consideration of amending Tooele City Code 7-16-3, Table 1, Table of Uses in Tooele City Code 7-1-5, definitions reading accessory vehicle storage yards. Mr. Agard.
Thank you, Chairman. You may recall a few months ago, maybe even a few weeks ago.
Is that mic on, Andrew? I'm sorry.
That mic's not on.
No.
Jared.
Okay, try it again.
There we go. Now we get to hear your beautiful voice.
Okay, you may recall a couple weeks ago we had an application by Marcosian Auto to change the land use map for some property located out in the industrial area. They were looking to increase some of the capabilities of their business and wanted to investigate doing an accessory vehicle storage yard. That land use map amendment was ultimately denied. However, along with the denial came a suggestion to staff that we pursue an ordinance amendment to try and benefit not only this business, but other automobile sales and rental businesses in the city. And we're always looking for ways in which we can help businesses in our fair city to thrive and look for ordinance amendments that can possibly do that. So this ordinance amendment that's being proposed, the catalyst behind it was Marcosian Auto. However, staff wanted to present this as an application from the city, not from Marcosian Auto. So currently, our regulations do not permit vehicle storage yards of any kind in association with automobile sales and rental. Now, although we do anticipate some vehicle storage will occur because they do display vehicles for sale, they don't have any ability to store vehicles that are not for sale. And so we wanted to do an ordinance that would allow that to occur. What we are proposing is to amend the table of uses and to add a new use that is accessory vehicle storage yard, and it's only with automobile sales and rental. So the only way you could have an accessory vehicles storage yard is if you operate an automobile sales and rental business. If you don't have an automobile sales and rental business, you don't get an accessory vehicle storage yard. The ordinance amendment also includes a note. You'll note there that it says see note 8. If you go to note 8, we wanted to codify some standards related to these accessory vehicle storage yards and have that in the code so that it's not subjective or something the applicant may not want to do. Those standards are: the vehicle storage area shall be enclosed by a 6-foot solid visual barrier fence composed of masonry, vinyl, or metal. We wanted this in here to try and eliminate any unpleasing views into the storage yard. It also is a good way to deter theft. Sometimes these thieves will like to get into the cars and steal catalytic converters, and the fence can help deter that. So it also helps deter some crime. We do want the vehicle storage area to be paved in either concrete or asphalt. This is in order to protect groundwater sources from leakages and so forth coming from the vehicles. And then we wanted to also limit the storage area to no more than 20% of the automobile sales and rental property. The automobile sales and rental businesses need to be first and foremost a sales business, not a storage yard. So we put this in here to make sure that the storage area remains a minor part of the sales business. And then the amendments to 7-1-5 definitions, we wanted to include a new definition for accessory vehicle storage yard, which currently is not defined by the code. We wanted to limit the number of days that these vehicles can be stored up to 120 days or 4 months, and also define the types of vehicles that they can store. Vehicles such as repossessed vehicles, vehicles awaiting insurance claims, and vehicles awaiting general maintenance or repair prior to being sold. We don't want this to be an auto wrecking yard. So that's the ordinance that we're proposing for this use. We think it will be a beneficial use to the city. It will provide increased capacity for auto dealerships to work with repossessed vehicles and vehicles awaiting insurance claims. We do anticipate that this will generate additional jobs in some of these areas. And so we're recommending, or that's the ordinance amendment. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to help you answer those for you.
All right, let's bring this back to the commission for questions or comments. I like the idea that you kind of laid out some ground rules, because that would have been my first thing.
And it would still require a conditional use. I forgot to mention that. This use would only be permissible in the light industrial, industrial service, and industrial zones. So they would still have to come for a conditional use permit. We wanted to keep that in there just in case there are other issues that the code itself does not address.
Perfect. All right, any other further questions or comments from the
I have
Yes,
one
Commissioner
question.
Robinson.
Just, I didn't look up the codes in the tables in the code book. Is there any way that an automobile dealership can be found in the general commercial or regional commercial, and they could want something like this in that zone as well?
The general commercial zone does permit automobile dealerships. We did consider that. We felt that the auto storage yard was more of a suitable use to the industrial areas. So in general commercial and regional commercial zones, they would not qualify for the accessory vehicle storage yard.
Okay.
A lot of that has to do with those locations right on Main Street.
That's kind of what I figured is, if you said you considered it, that's good enough for me. I just didn't want it to go overlooked.
I appreciate the question. Thank you.
Commissioner Sloan?
Did you happen to run this past Marcosian? Do they have any issues with it, any heartburn?
I worked with, Jared, what was his name? Alan Burrows from Marcosian, and basically what we have here is pretty much, he thinks is a good ordinance.
Yeah, but that was my
Suit him
concern,
well.
is that, not that it's wrong, but the paving is certainly a little more expensive than what they're looking at before. So
Yeah.
I just want to make sure, not that I'm trying to make life that easy for anybody doing this. I think these are solid recommendations as far as the requirements. I'm quite happy with them.
Any other questions or comments from the commission?
Okay.
All
Thank
right,
you.
this item does require a public hearing. So I'll go ahead and open the public hearing for this particular item. If you'll please approach the podium, state your name for the record, and we can give you a piece of paper to write on too. Bueller. Seeing no one approach, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing on this item and bring it back to the commission for further action.
Mr. Chair, I move we forward a positive recommendation to the City Council for the accessory vehicle storage yard text amendment proposed by Tooele City.
I got a motion. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, based on the findings and subject to the conditions in the staff report.
Perfect. I got a positive recommendation from Commissioner Robinson. Do I have a second?
Second.
And a second from Commissioner Anderson. Commissioner Hammer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Proctor?
Aye.
Commissioner Sloan?
Aye.
Commissioner Robinson?
Aye.
Commissioner Jensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson?
Aye.
I am Chairman Hamilton. I also vote aye. That one passes with a positive recommendation going up to the City Council. Number 4 on our agenda is a review and a decision. It's a consideration of request by Justin Kimball, representing Kimball Investments, for preliminary approval for a 6-lot commercial subdivision of property located at approximately 1000 North Main Street in the GC General Commercial Zoning District. Mr. Hall.
Thank you. This is, as you said, a commercial subdivision, mainly. The first thing we need to understand about it, it's a commercial subdivision, but it does require your approval for the preliminary as a planning commission. Again, this is some rules have changed, so just as a reminder, you are now the land use authority for preliminary subdivision approval. So it won't be a recommendation onto city council that you make tonight. It'll be either an up or down for the preliminary plan to be approved or denied. This is 10th and Main, they call it. So 1000 North is here at the top of the project, and then Main Street running along here. This is, just to put you in the right place, the 7-Eleven and Wendy's, where I get chili for lunch many, many times now. But that's not important. Let's move on to the next part. This is in the GC zone that we were just talking about along Main Street again. It is the commercial zone. The land use for this area is also regional commercial, which is the land use category. And that both of those, the zoning and the land use category, support this kind of subdivision. The subdivision supports a commercial development that's kind of congregated. So there'll be about, I've left my notes up at the other stand, but I can remember it's about 161,000 square feet of commercial that will go in here eventually in the first phase. There'll be more after that if that's successful. So it's a good project for the area. As you can see, we talk about this a little bit in the staff report. As you can see, there's a lot of residential around it. There's more development coming to the north of it, and as we provide services that are closer to those residences, that helps everybody. Fewer trips, better air quality, that kind of thing. And just good community because you have close by commercial to use and stay in your area and feel like you belong there. So we do feel like, first off, that it fits the goals and the objectives. It meets those goals and objectives of the general plan and the land use category and the purposes of the zone, that GC zone. The subdivision is basically, as we described in the report, there are 6 lots and then 2 parcels that are contained in this area. It's about 32 acres, if I remember correctly. The first lot, I'll get the lots out of order, and I don't want to do that, and like I said, I left my notes. But the first lot is basically a large area that's intended for parking in the site plan that's being run simultaneously with this subdivision. This subdivision supports a large master site plan for the area. This first lot that you see is for parking, centralized parking for the whole project. These are box stores, retail, with a big anchor down to this area, and then there are pad sites located here on that lot. This is in the future phase, Lot 4, but Lot 5 and Lot 6 are both ready to be turned into pad sites. They'd support restaurants, that kind of thing. The main entrance to the project will be right here. That's scheduled to be signalized as an intersection in the corridor plan. That's one of the things that you wonder about, I'm sure, but that's where the signal for the project would be. Others would be right in, right out only, and then there's full planned as well for the future. There is one entrance on the back side here on the west side, 200 West, but that would be a small kind of entrance, but an allowance for the neighborhood to get into the project without having to go out on the main streets as well. Then there are the 2 other parcels, Parcel B and Parcel A. Those are these large sections here. They're not part of the first phase, and then the one lot that's not part of the first phase, Lot 4, that's a pad site lot as well. But their plan to bring tenants for those areas is a little longer term. So the first things that would come would be the main box area, the 2 pad sites here, the pad site at this corner, and then the parking area here. I think there were some other things I wanted to mention, just parking for the area, just in case that's a concern. I know a lot of times when there's commercial projects and there's neighborhoods around it, you worry that parking will bleed out. Looking at calculations for parking, that 161,000 in the first phase would require about 530 some odd parking spaces. It'll have 700 and some odd parking spaces associated with it from the get-go in first phase. So you shouldn't see parking problems in the neighborhoods at all. It's very well parked. And that kind of brings us to the conclusion, really, for the subdivision portion of it. The site plan will contain probably some uses that come in the future that will need conditional use approval. Now, those would come before the Planning Commission as well. But we'll have to see what those tenants wind up being. We are recommending approval of the subdivision with those 5 conditions, and just as, again, as a reminder, you're not recommending to the council at this point. You are the approving body or denying body. So, have any questions for staff? A little disjointed tonight, sorry.
Let's bring us back to the commission for questions and comments. Commissioner Sloan?
Could you go back to the slide that shows the map?
Sure.
Please? Talk to me about the southeast corner that butts up to Denny's.
Right here. Here?
Yeah, okay, well, you've got the road that you're saying is designed
Yeah,
to be signalized. Are you concerned at all about the proximity of that signal and the current entrance to Denny's? Or a better question, is UDOT going to have a problem with that?
It's in that corridor plan, and it's been reviewed, and there's been a traffic impact study done for this, and that's been approved. Do you want to go ahead? Okay. He's coming.
That's a great question, Commissioner Sloan. If you look at that plan, you'll notice that there's a dark connection there to the Denny site. What's going to happen is the existing Denny's entrance is going to be removed, and they will then be reconstructing their entrance to access the drive to the north. So there will no longer be two accesses there, just the signalized intersection.
So that's that.
That's it right there.
Does Denny's know that?
They do, and the city's actually going to, the city's RDA, correct me if I'm wrong, Councilwoman, but I believe the city's RDA is going to pay for those improvements. Is that right?
Okay, thank you.
Very good question. I was concerned about that too. Kind of sounds like a mess, but. Okay, any other further questions or comments? And are we sure these are enough entrances to help feed this? I'm worried more about the back end in my own opinion, but.
Do you mean on the 200 west side?
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, there's potential, I guess there would be potential to create another entrance here if there were need for that as parcel A and parcel B develop. But in terms of the development, the way it sits, I don't think that would necessarily be a problem.
So, sorry, Jared.
No, you're good.
He kind of came in mid-game on this project, so I don't want to leave him hanging. But we're also working with UDOT to get two accesses from 1000 North approved for this development. You can see where those are located currently. Right now, what we're trying to determine with UDOT is if they will be full accesses or right in and right out. There is a corridor agreement on 1000 North that governs the locations of those intersections. So I anticipate that they'll be right in, right out intersections only. But we are working with UDOT to get those finalized. So there'll be those additional accesses into the development on the north side as well.
The access on the west end, is that going to be right in, right out, or is that, and it looks like it's a smaller access point.
I believe the access on the west will just be a full access. It won't be limited to right in or right out.
A lot less traffic there than there would be on 1000 North. I can see that for sure.
Not much of a buffer zone for that community to the west, though.
In this area, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is quite a large area actually, and anything that develops up in here, these are large areas that would be landscape buffer, and that parking lot starts here. So there is actually a pretty good buffer, and anything new that comes in, this is a detention basin here, and there'll be that same buffer all along that. Anywhere we butt up against residential zoning, there'll be landscape buffers. That's the final condition we're asking for, is that we see that landscaping for the final plan approval for the subdivision, as opposed to just the site plan, so it's connected to it and part of it. We see that in the improvements. Same with the south side as well. Really great questions, thank you. Any other questions?
This making us the deciding board for this. I want everybody to get all your questions out now. I don't care how stupid you think it is, let's ask it. Okay, if there are no further questions or comments, this does not require a public hearing, so we'll go ahead and entertain a motion on this one.
Chairman, I make a motion.
Yes, Commissioner Proctor.
I move we approve the request by Kimball Investments for preliminary subdivision plan application P2476 based on the findings and subject conditions listed in the staff report dated February 9th, 2024.
I got a motion to approve from Commissioner Proctor. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
And a second from Commissioner Hammer. Any other discussion before we vote?
Just a comment.
Yes.
The question I asked about Denny's concerns me a little bit. And I understand your explanation. It makes sense to me. I guess where I'm getting concerned, it seems to me that taking away a Main Street, an established Main Street access to that business and sticking their access in the parking lot, I understand that the city's going to pay for whatever. If I understood that, you're not talking about creating an additional Main Street. You're just talking about the access from the parking lot into the Denny's parking lot. Is that correct? And this may not be a question you can answer, but wouldn't that hurt his traffic? I mean, the reason I bring him up is because when they did the reconstruction of Main Street, very few businesses had the adverse impact on his business that Denny's did, because he couldn't get people in and out of his restaurant. And he was, at the time he was active in the chamber. We were all active in the chamber, and I just remember very much the heated debate and issues that the owner had with that process at the time. So I'm a little shocked that he's not demanding a really big check to give up his access.
I couldn't tell you if he's demanding a really big check, but I would. It's maybe counterintuitive, but if you're Denny's, and you're alone on that street without the development next to you, and if the development next to you is going to get an access anyway, and you can be made kind of part of that development, and there's going to be an anchor tenant and other businesses. Business helps business grow. You want to be part of that activity, and being right off of the intersection that gets signalized is actually probably pretty good for him. To be honest, easier to get into his place with a signal, and you can't get the signal for your business alone, but you do get it with the center. He's not tied to the center directly as part of the subdivision, but in practical terms, he is, because he's right there off the intersection that brings him in now with the signal. In a lot of ways, it would probably be good for him.
And I'm not speaking for him. I'm
sure.
using my institutional memory, such as it is.
Yeah. No, and I'm not aware of his feelings about it either, to be honest. I'm just saying I know in terms of business development and being part of a center versus standing alone, it's probably good for his business overall.
Thank you.
I think your concerns are very valid. That concrete barrier kind of hurt a lot of access into businesses. So I get the question, and I think you guys have worked around it, in my opinion. Hopefully it helps them out. But
thank you.
Chairman, one
Yes.
question. Jared, before you leave, how was notification sent out? Was it sent out to the 200 feet? Like, would the owner
in
of
subdivisions,
Denny's know
that's
that?
for subdivisions for Tooele. That's not how it works. It gets posted to the sites, and that's all. Everyone else that's
It's not a public hearing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I wondered if he,
But as part of that corridor,
He
UDOT
knows.
won't remove his access without him knowing that. So
as long as our businesses are taken care of, I think we're all on the same page. They're the ones that feed our community too. So literally, Denny's does.
For the time
more
that
ways
you're out
than
about,
one,
yeah.
yeah.
All right. Any other further questions? Those are great questions. All right. Any of those comments affect our motion and our second on the table already?
No.
All right. Commissioner Hammer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Proctor?
Aye.
Commissioner Sloan?
Aye.
Commissioner Robinson?
Aye.
Commissioner Jensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson?
Aye.
I am Chairman Hamilton. I also vote aye. This one is approved.
thank you.
Not going to the city council. It's approved already.
Look at us go.
I know. Pulling up our big boy pants tonight. Number 5 on our agenda is our city council reports. Councilwoman Manzione.
Hello. I think those were great questions, and just since I am the RDA chair, we are paying for it, and I know that Denny's has been in on the conversation from the very beginning, and it is a benefit to them to have a light there. So now they won't be limited by the median, and I think the parking lot will be better configured to come off of that lighted entrance. So, yep. Okay, if you have not listened to the State of the City address, we did have the State of the City address last Wednesday. It was really good. We had to hear the great things that are happening in our city, if you didn't already know. And if you don't want to listen to it, it was printed in its entirety in the newspaper today, so you can read it at your leisure. I would encourage you to do that. We had a really pretty short meeting, but one thing we did approve an agreement with Ensign Engineering for the design of the 2400 North Roadway and Middle Canyon Channel Crossing by the new Deseret Peak High School. So you may remember there were discussions at the Planning Commission when the high school was approved, and the roadway there, and there's the FEMA channel. So the city was able to go to the county and get some grant money for the school district to complete that part of the road, and part of that money will be used to get this design to cross that channel. So that's in the works. That's good news because that's an important road, I think. And that was really the big thing from our meeting that I thought would apply here. So any questions? I guess we could say we're moving along with Fire Station 3 too. We did do some stuff for that, so
Yeah, a comment from the neighbor saying it's really big.
it is really big.
Apparently the pictures didn't convey that from the rendering.
It's hard to look at a
it's really
picture
big.
and realize how big it's going to be. But it's much needed.
Yes, it is.
Very cool facility.
Yeah.
Excited for that, for sure, yeah. Any other further questions for council? This is our time to harass her.
I know.
Actually, you can do that anytime.
I know, I call her
She's
anytime.
readily available.
I have a pretty open door, so
Her and Ed both. All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you,
I
appreciate
don't know, I
that.
don't see the Ed stand up here every day.
You have a lot better job than you.
She probably told Ed to be quiet and sit down.
Well, it's entirely possible.
All right, number 6 on our agenda is a review and approval of our planning commission minutes for the meeting held on January 10th, 2024. Any corrections or additions to those minutes? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Actually, Melody
Yes.
Gochus was not a commissioner,
Okay, and she's on there?
and she's on there. And my name's spelled wrong.
Will you spell it into the microphone for us?
Kelley.
All right, with the condition of removing Commissioner Gochus from that agenda and spelling your name correct, is there anything else?
No.
All right,
I move to approve the minutes from January 10th with the correct changes.
okay, I got a motion to approve from Commissioner Anderson with the correct changes. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Commissioner Hammer. Commissioner Hammer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Proctor?
Aye.
Commissioner Sloan?
Aye.
Commissioner Robinson? Aye. Commissioner Jensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson?
Aye.
Chairman Hamilton also votes aye. Those pass with those corrections made. Moves us on to number 7 is our Planning Commission land use training.
I hope there are cookies. I didn't either.
You get a Utah truffle.
I already ate mine.
I know, and I'm feeling pretty weak now.
Looks like she went to Costco to get her bag, so.
We'll see how long training goes. Come around again. Come around. Thanks.
Thank you.
You're the best.
It's true, she is. Yeah, give me 2 more, Mr. Diabetes.
Oh, I don't need more.
All right, are you ready to hear me talk for a while?
Absolutely.
That's what we're here for.
We need to have at least an hour of this, and I had a really hard time finding enough to put into this to make an hour out of it, but this is the training on the general powers and duties of the Planning Commission. And the first question you're probably going to ask is, why are we talking about this? Well, I know you like civics. I like civics. I find it quite interesting. But the real reason we're talking about governmental organization and general powers is because we have to. We are required by the state code to do 1 hour of general powers and duties training every year. And so that's where we are and why we have to talk about some of this stuff. So some of it you're going to find you probably already know. All of you are very intelligent and well-educated people, so I'm probably going to be going over some things that you know very well. Just bear with me as we work through this training process. First of all is how can commissioners achieve their 4 hours? You are required by state law to have 4 hours of training every year. One of the first ways you can obtain 1 hour is to attend 12 planning commission meetings per year. That's 1 hour of training. Another way you can do this is to attend planning conferences. The Utah chapter of the American Planning Association has a fall and spring conference every year. The Utah Land Institute has training sessions that they do. The Urban Land Institute also does. The city has in its budget training funds. So if you find a conference that you would like to attend, you can let me know and the city can cover the registration costs for those conferences. I know that Commissioners Proctor and Sloan and Hamilton have in the past attended the Utah chapter of APA. Those trainings can be very beneficial, if not boring, but you know, they do have some interesting things from time to time. You can also seek out training opportunities through the state and through the Utah League of Cities and Towns. I know that Commissioner Anderson recently completed a training with the ULCT. Or you can sit back, have a snack, and let city staff provide you with some training, which we are more than happy to do. Okay? I promise you will love it, and hopefully you'll have a trip down memory lane, back to your high school civics class. So how is government supposed to work? We all are pretty familiar with the structure of our government. We typically have three branches of government. We have the legislative branch, we have the judicial branch, and the blue is the executive branch, although you can hardly read it on the slide. And what are these three branches supposed to do? The legislative branch is the branch that makes laws. The executive branch is the branch of government that executes the law, and the judicial branch is the branch of government that interprets the law. How is government supposed to work? Why are there three branches of government? And which branch is more important than the other? One of the ingenious things about this system is there is a check and balance system put in place by having three different branches. And each one of these branches of government can keep the power of the other branch in check. So that's the main reason why this system of government is established as it is to keep government under control. Now you probably will note that it doesn't work very well when it comes to the federal government. We have a Congress that doesn't do much and a presidency that does too much. But on the local aspect of government, I think this system works pretty well. And I think it serves the citizens fairly well as also. So who plays these various roles of the legislative, the executive, and the judicial? At the federal level, we have the Congress, which is the House of Representatives, and the Senate. The Senate at one time was selected by the state legislatures until they changed it to a glorified House of Representatives. The presidency is the executive branch, which is the White House and all of the agencies that are under the executive branch, the EPA, the CIA, the IRS, all of the alphabet agencies. And then you have the courts. You have the Supreme Court and then the federal appeals courts. That's the federal level. The state level is very similar to the federal level. We have the state legislature, which is the House and Senate, as the legislative authority. And then we have the governor and his departments as the executive authority. And then you have the Utah Supreme and the state courts in the judicial. So how about Tooele City? Well, Tooele City is also structured in fairly the same manner as the state and the federal government. Our legislative authority is the city council and the planning commission. I would also add that staff is probably involved in the legislative responsibilities of the city as well. Just tonight, the planning commission recommended a new ordinance for our zoning code, and that ordinance was written by yours truly. So staff may write the ordinances, but it's ultimately the planning commission makes the recommendation, and then the city council is the one that adopts the new law. Before I brought that ordinance to you, I did present that ordinance to the city council as a work session for their blessing. So even though staff does write many of those codes, we don't do many of those things without the blessing or the support of the city council. As far as the executive branch for Tooele City, you have the mayor. So if we were the United States, the mayor essentially would be the president. And then you have staff and the planning commission. Notice the planning commission pops up twice, both legislative and administrative. And we'll touch on that later. Then you have the judicial branch of the city. You have the courts, the city attorney, and the zoning administrator. So do all cities do everything the same way? In the state of Utah, there are many different forms of government for Utah's city. And I'd like to go through those forms. The first one is the council-mayor form of government. So in a council-mayor form, you have elected city officials. You have an elected city council with a selected chairperson. You have an elected mayor as CEO and administrative authority. And the mayor is a non-voting mayor with veto authority. Now, you probably note that that's pretty close to what Tooele City operates as. We have an elected city council. They choose their own chairperson. The mayor is elected and is the city's CEO. And the mayor does not vote with the city council unless there's a tie to be broken. And I believe she does have veto authority. There's also the 6-member form of government where you have 6 elected city council members and then one as the mayor. The mayor is non-voting. The mayor is chair of the council and may vote to break ties, vote on city manager issues, on mayoral roles, and has no veto authority. Ceremonial functions of the city are controlled by the council, and then the council appoints the mayor pro tempore. You also have a 5-member council. In this case, you have 5 elected city council members, and one is the mayor. The mayor is a regular and voting member of the city council. The mayor is the chair of the council and controls the ceremonial functions of the city. The council appoints the mayor pro tem, and then the mayor has no veto authority. I recently worked in Riverton, 6 years ago, but when I was there, this is the type of government they had. The mayor was the chair of the council and was directly involved with the council business. And then we have what we call metro townships. Metro townships are not cities, but they are jurisdictions. Usually they are unincorporated areas. These townships have the same arrangement as a 5-member council and usually involves a municipal services district. A good example of one of these is Stansbury Park. They have the Stansbury Park Improvement District to provide all of the utilities, and then we have the Stansbury Park Improvement Board, which basically governs a lot of the necessities of Stansbury Park. What form of government does Tooele City utilize?
A completely different one than.
Say that again?
A completely different one than any of those that you listed.
Okay.
We're the only one that have it too, aren't we, in the state of Utah?
Yeah, you're getting there.
I don't remember what it is.
We are a charter city.
The only one.
We have a governing document that basically establishes our form of government. It's our own little constitution. And we are proud of that charter. And here's some cool stuff about our charter. We are the last city in the state of Utah to be a charter city. No other city in this state has a charter. Can you name the last city that had one, that recently abandoned their charter? Ogden City. Well, Ogden was the last city that abandoned their charter in favor of another form of government. But Tooele City is the last. Kind of proud of that. So what does Tooele City's charter do? Well, number one, it establishes the form of government. And that form of government is similar, that's a typo, that should be 5 council member government, which I described at the beginning. The mayor is not part of the city council. Okay, the mayor does break ties when that happens, and the only time that would happen is if we had one city council member absent and you get a vote of 2-2. Doesn't happen very often. The mayor does not vote on mayoral roles. Those are established by the council and the charter. And then the mayor is the city manager. So the mayor basically runs the day-to-day operations of the city. The mayor has veto authority. The mayor is not the city council chair. The council chooses its own chair. This charter also manages the ceremonial functions of the city. I'm not entirely sure what the ceremonial functions are, but and then the mayor does not appoint the mayor pro tem. That is a council responsibility. So the question has to be asked, what do we do all day? Okay, we're here 8 hours a day, in some cases 14 hours a day, but what do we do all day? Well, let's look at Tooele City's legislative branch. That consists of the city council and the planning commission. And as I mentioned before, in many cases, staff. Roger Baker, the city attorney, is very directly involved with legislative business. And as I mentioned, we just presented a legislative matter to you tonight. But for the most part, the role of approving new legislature in a new legislative acts in Tooele City comes down to the planning commission and the city council. So what are the city council's responsibility? Let's talk a little bit about our city council. We have 2 representatives from our city council here with us tonight, so they can correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. But our city council is a 5-member, nonpartisan elected body. We don't care if they're Democrats, Republicans, Green, Libertarians, Independents. That doesn't matter. That's not what the city council is. They are nonpartisan elected officials. The city council is, I like to call it the sovereign. They are the boss. They control the budget. They control fund appropriations. They control the money. And they have the final say. They approve the budget. They can amend the mayor's budget. They are the ones that have the power of the purse string. The city council also adopts ordinances and resolutions. So anytime we have a new ordinance or new resolution, it goes to the city council for approval. The city council consents to mayoral appointments. When I was appointed as the director of community development, the mayor made that appointment, but it had to be approved and consented by the city council, a majority of the council. And that is something that is unique to our charter. The city council sets city tax rates, utility rates, and fees. They approve contracts and agreements. They approve purchases of $30,000 or more. And then they set parameters for their own business. Now, the city council has members that sit on a lot of boards and committees throughout the state, throughout the county, and other locations. So they have a lot of business that they set for themselves. Now, how is the Planning Commission involved in the legislative aspects of the city? Well, first of all, you are a nine-member nonpartisan appointed body, 7 full-time regular commissioners and 2 alternates. Commissioner Dunn is one of our alternates, and we are trying to fill the other alternate position to replace Councilmember Golchis. You make recommendations on land use ordinances. So anytime we have an ordinance pertaining to land use, whether it be to Title VII, the zoning code, or whether it be to zoning maps, land use maps, general plan, or annexations, the Planning Commission is required to make a recommendation. And that recommendation goes to the City Council, where the City Council then considers that recommendation in making their decision, which I know you are all fully aware of. And number 3, the Planning Commission can decide certain delegated cases. I'm not entirely sure what that means, but I think what it's referring to is if the City Council wanted the Planning Commission to handle an item, they could delegate that to you. And they have the authority to do that. And then, of course, you set the parameters for your own business. You have your own bylaws that you, as a commission, control and can amend at any time you'd like to. And we'll be having a training on those in the future. Tooele City's judicial branch consists of the courts, the city attorney, and the zoning administrator. The judicial courts hear and decide cases and complaints, and then they interpret laws as applied to complaints. Typically, they don't usually get involved with zoning matters. However, sometimes zoning issues can end up in the courts, but typically those go to higher courts and state courts rather than just local courts. The city attorney, Mr. Roger Baker, prepares and reviews ordinances and resolutions. Whenever I write an ordinance for the Planning Commission to consider, such as the one that was considered tonight, I always consult the city attorney as I'm writing that new ordinance. He always has excellent insights, and he's a great benefit to me personally when writing those ordinances, and I appreciate his help. The city attorney also provides guidance and advises administrative and legislative branches, so he's there to advise. Now, the zoning administrator. Do you know who the zoning administrator is? The city has a zoning administrator. Do you know who that individual is?
Which of you two guys is it?
It's that gentleman sitting right there, Mr. Jared Hall. He is part of the judicial branch of the city government. What does the zoning administrator do? He is both the city planner and the zoning administrator. The zoning administrator has a specific responsibility to interpret Title 7, Chapters 1 through 27 of the Tooele City Code. So whenever somebody comes to the city and says, I don't agree with how you interpreted that ordinance, we either look to the zoning administrator to interpret that and make an official determination. And that goes to number 2, to prepare administrative interpretations. An applicant can submit an administrative interpretation application and request an official determination. It happens more often than you think. During my tenure as zoning administrator, I issued interpretations related to parking and guest parking for multifamily residential projects. I issued an interpretation for irrigation shares not being considered as water rights, and a handful of other things. So they do come forward, and the zoning administrator, his responsibility is to make those interpretations. So the largest branch of Tooele City's government is the administrative branch, and it is composed of the mayor, and it's also composed of staff, and there you are again, the Planning Commission. Okay? So what does the mayor do? The mayor does a lot, and I can tell you right now, I would never want to be the mayor. I admire Mayor Wynn and the work that she puts into the city. She is a very dedicated mayor and a very busy mayor. And I'm sure the stresses of that job can wear on her. But let's look at the job that she does do. The mayor is the CEO of the city and oversees all of the day-to-day operations of the city. So everything that goes on inside City Hall, inside Public Works, and the water department, the golf course, all those things, the mayor is responsible for overseeing those operations. The mayor supervises all of the city's departments. So community development, finance, HR, they are all supervised by the mayor. The mayor executes the ordinances and resolutions passed by the city council. So when the city council passes a new law, it's the mayor's job to make sure that that law is enforced. So if the city council passed a law that said every citizen of Tooele is going to wear a red hat, it would be the mayor's job to find the staff to enforce the red hat ordinance, make sure that people are wearing their red hats. Okay? It would also be the judicial branches to make sure that forcing people to wear red hats is entirely legal. But that's what the mayor does. She executes the will of the city council when they pass new laws. And the mayor is also the executive director of the city's RDA. The mayor also manages the city budget. When the city council approves the budget, the mayor then executes the budget. She spends the money and makes sure that we maintain our budget. The mayor appoints department directors. The mayor manages city construction projects, manages maintenance projects, and manages city purchases. Now, of course, one person can't manage all that work. And so that's why she appoints department heads, and each department head then manages the various divisions within their department. My department has 3 divisions. We've got the building department, we've got the planning division, and the business licensing division. And my job is to manage those, and then I report directly to the mayor. What does city staff do? City staff are the force that make the city operate. The council makes the laws, the city mayor tells us how to go about doing that, and then we're the worker bees that make that happen. City staff facilitate the procedures and policies of the city. Now, a policy is not the same as an ordinance or a law. A policy is similar to what would be called an executive order. It applies only to the city staff. It does not apply to the general public. So when a policy is issued by the mayor or perhaps the city council, city staff makes sure that that happens. City staff renders decisions for delegated cases. This is definitely one that city staff help with. There's many times the zoning administrator, the city attorney, the city engineer. We help make decisions when the mayor or members of the council need some professional guidance on that. And then, of course, staff renders the services to the public as required. Our job is to assist the public of Tooele City. In my department, when somebody comes in to pull a building permit, we need to have somebody there so they can pull their building permit. So that's what we do, is we assist the general public as well. So how is the Planning Commission part of the administrative slash executive branch of Tooele City government? So the Planning Commission reviews applications based upon established law. So a good example of this is the subdivision or subdivisions. Recently, the City Council was the final authority on subdivisions. However, they recently amended the subdivision ordinance as required by the state to grant that authority to the Planning Commission. Is the City Council now completely out of subdivisions in Tooele City? That's a question for you. Is the City Council now out of subdivisions?
The way it's written, no.
They're out of the approval process.
Yeah.
But the City Council still makes the subdivision law. So they establish the subdivision ordinance, the parameters that go into the subdivision, the width of the streets, the type of pavement that's used. They establish the lot size, the lot widths, and so forth through the zoning code. So they write the law, but they are not involved in the enforcement of that law. That's what the state did when they caused us to change the ordinance. They removed the City Council from the administrative part and put that burden on the Planning Commission. So that's one way that you are an administrative authority. The other one is site plans. The City Council does not see site plans. That is the Planning Commission's authority. The Planning Commission also reviews multifamily residential site plans as well as conditional use permits. So did you know that planning commissions are required by Utah state law? They are. Utah Code 10-9A-302 requires that all political entities of 5,000 people or more shall have a planning commission. Doesn't matter if you're not developing anything. If you have 5,000 people or more, you're going to have a planning commission. Okay? Did you know that the city charter also requires a planning commission? The Tooele City Charter has language in Article 5 that lays out the commissioner's terms and how vacancies on the commission are filled, and also refers to the state code in regards to planning commission's responsibilities. Question for you, do you know which city code directly administers and authorizes the planning commission? Okay. It's not Title 7.
No.
It's Title 2, Chapter 3. Okay? This code creates the planning commission. It enumerates the duties of the planning commission, as well as the organization of the planning commission. It also goes over assignments to each member, the compensation, which is the stipend that you were paid, meetings, proceedings and records, and then also removal from office. Now, you don't see the removal from office very often, but it does happen. There are two things that usually precede the removal from office for a planning commissioner. I've seen it twice in my career. The first one happened in Riverton. We had a planning commissioner that was very belligerent towards staff. He took great pleasure out of making fun of staff during the meetings. I can recall one particular meeting where I had mislabeled an elementary school. I had labeled it as South Hills Elementary instead of I think it was Green Hill or Green Elementary, something like that. And he took great pleasure in, how come our staff doesn't know where the schools are? And just really made himself a nuisance. He wasn't eliminated from the Planning Commission, but his term expired at the end of the year and the mayor did not renew his term. The other thing that planning commissioners can do to warrant a removal from office is if they're abusive to applicants. You may be familiar with the situation we had on our own commission where we had a commissioner that was abusive towards applicants and he was removed from the commission. Applicants pay a lot of money to have their applications put through the city. There's a lot of money invested in these applications and they deserve the respect that we can give them. And you guys are excellent. You guys are an excellent commission. I have never felt at any time that the Planning Commission was attacking staff or the applicants. You guys do excellent work as a commission. But removal does happen from time to time. So question for you, why are planning commissioners appointed instead of elected? And how does this benefit the city? Any thoughts?
It saves money on elections.
There's a reason why you're appointed and not elected.
I'll give a guess.
The city charter.
If you were elected, oh yeah, city charter. But if you were elected, it would be easier to get the right person on the planning commission, like a developer or I don't know, that would be my guess.
Okay? I like where you're going with that. Planning commissioners are appointed because they are not subject to political winds and changes resulting from elections, pretty much what Commissioner Hammer was saying. Planning commissioners also need to make difficult decisions without worrying about its effects on a constituency, unlike the city council, who is beholden to the voters. So the city council, they consider things differently in a different manner than the planning commission does because they have to answer to their constituencies. So they're going to look at projects and zoning map amendments and things in a different, slightly different light than the planning commission is. The beauty of being appointed as a planning commissioner is you don't have to worry about that. So when an unpopular decision comes before you, you may have a lot of public outcry about it, but you can make the decisions that are best for the city as a whole and not have to worry about any repercussions from your constituency.
Other than the repercussions that take place from that door to my car.
Exactly. But that's the purpose behind having you appointed.
And after every meeting, so.
Or from our observers, sometimes who like to heckle the planning commission. But yeah, you're not subject to those things. And the purpose of that is so that you can make decisions that are best for the city that are not popular. Sometimes you're going to approve a subdivision that's going to make people angry, but it's good for the city. You're going to approve a commercial business, a site plan that's got some people upset, but it's good for the city. And that's why you're not elected, so you can make those decisions. We also do not provide your contact information to the public. So I've had people call and says, I want Tyson Hamilton's phone number. I said, well, he's an appointed official. I'm not going to give that number out.
But he's right around the corner.
They just show up at my shop.
That doesn't prevent them from finding you.
Yeah,
but
they do.
we do not provide that information. Now, when somebody calls and wants to talk to Councilman Ed Hansen, I say his contact information is available on the city's website. If you'd like to contact him, you can get that information there. Their role is just very different from yours, and so that's why you are appointed. And I always think that's an important thing to point out. So as planning commissioners, how do you know what you are supposed to be doing? Okay? When we bring an application to you and say, okay, here it is, approve it, how do you know what you're supposed to be doing? Well, let's go through that really quick. The first thing I would suggest that you do is start with the basics. What are we talking about? Is the item we're talking about a legislative matter or is it an administrative matter? So when you get your packets and you're looking through your packet information, is it a zoning map amendment? Is it a land use map amendment, a general plan amendment, ordinance amendment, or is it an annexation? If it's one of these, then it's a legislative matter and you are only forwarding a recommendation. The decision is not yours. So you can pretty much forward whatever recommendation you want to the city council. You're not beholden to any ordinances or codes. You can pretty much do what you like in regards to your recommendation. An administrative matter would be preliminary subdivisions, conditional use permits, site plan design reviews, and conditional use permit enforcement. These are administrative matters. These do not go to the city council. You are the end authority for these. So naturally, you're going to look at these a little differently than you would a recommendation. So this is because these are your decision. Do your homework and ask questions. Staff encourages you to ask us questions, even the hard ones. If I can't answer it, we may have Paul here. If Paul can't answer it, Roger can answer it. If Roger can't answer it, maybe one of those city council representatives can answer it. We will find the answers for you. Don't wait until planning commission meetings to ask those questions. You have questions, you know where my office is. You can come in anytime and I'll open my door for you. Jared is also available at all time for you if you have any questions or need any information. You can email us, you can call us. Okay? We're here for you. And then always remember the scope of your considerations and your decisions. As I mentioned earlier, many of these projects involve a lot of money. And just always be considerate of the scope of what you're doing. Sometimes when we say no, it's going to cost people money. And no may be the right answer, but just always be aware that there's some big dollars riding on a lot of these projects. What are your responsibilities as the Planning Commission? Okay. The Planning Commission must approve a project if it meets city code. If a subdivision comes before you and it meets city code, you have to approve it. If a site plan comes before you and it meets city code, you have to approve it. Okay? You are obligated to approve a project if it complies with the code. Now, you don't have to approve a project if you determine it does not comply with the city code. In that case, you could issue a denial, or you could table it and ask them to resolve it. You could also approve it with a condition stating that you will do this as part of it. If you do the conditions, you would need to prepare a finding of fact to establish that condition. So typically, we're not going to bring a subdivision to you or a site plan to you if we can't already tell you that it meets the code. But, Jared and I, we're pretty good at what we do, but we're not perfect. And we do make mistakes sometimes, and sometimes we miss things. And if you catch issues that aren't compliant with the code, then you can take action to resolve those. There's a rooster in the house. Another responsibility would be to be prepared. Like I said, the applicants have paid large sums of money for their projects and deserve due diligence. And then also view a matter objectively. Try to keep your personal views contained when reviewing applications. You may not like a particular developer, or you may think the guy is ugly, like me. That shouldn't sway your decision. Just focus on what the ordinance is and that the ordinance is being satisfied. What are some tools that you can use? One of the tools that I think the Planning Commission has used, but can use more if they need to, is to table or continue an item. So when an item comes before the Planning Commission and there's some ambiguity there, you're not sure whether it complies with the code, or you'd like some more information, you are free to table or continue an item until you have that information you need to make your decision. And there's no limitations on how many times you can table an item either. So if you're in a difficult decision, feel free to use that tool. We want a traffic study. We want more information about the crime rates in this area before we make a decision. And staff and the applicant will go about finding that information for you. So please feel free to use that tool when you can. City staff is a good tool. Use us. Email us. Call us. Pop into our office once in a while. Don't be shy. I love it when the planning commissioners come in and visit us and ask questions. I really do. City council as well. So, staff reports are a good tool for you. Staff reports are generally written by the city planner and sent to the commission on Fridays prior to their Wednesday meeting. Staff reports include all the information that staff can think of without overwhelming you and boring you to death. Most questions regarding a proposed development can be answered by reading the staff report. You guys are really good about doing that. The staff report also includes code references, maps, and development plans for your reference and use when considering an application. And then just be prepared for your meetings. Read and study your reports. I would encourage site visits. Visit the site and see what the site looks like. And then you can reach out to staff if you have any questions. So that's pretty much what I had to present to you in regards to powers and duties, but I'd like to give you a little quiz. I've put together 10 questions and see if you guys can get the answers. So question number 1, is the Planning Commission part of the legislative branch of Tooele City's government?
Yes.
Yes, it is. You're actually a considerable part of that. Anytime we have a land use issue, that's legislative, and you guys are involved in that. Question number 2, Utah State Code and Tooele City's Code authorize the creation of the Planning Commission. Is there anything else that authorizes the Planning Commission in Tooele City?
The city charter.
The charter. Yep, the charter does. Exactly.
The code and the charter are different.
Yep. Question number 3, can the Planning Commission deny a site plan or subdivision application because they don't like the street names?
Yes. Start with the names up here.
Is that your final answer?
No,
No, you can't. You have to approve it. You're required by state law to approve it if it meets code. Okay? You can deny it, or you can approve with conditions if you determine it does not meet code. But you have to have that substantiated by finding of fact. Okay? Question number 4, when are staff reports generally sent to the planning commissioners? Friday before your meeting, okay? Usually we don't miss that. There was one time I think Jim and I sent them out to you on a Monday. That was because both of us were absent that day, but usually they come out on the Friday before. Question number 5, are zoning map amendments legislative or administrative actions? Legislative?
Yeah.
That's correct. They are legislative. Question number 6, who is responsible to administer the day-to-day activities of the city?
Mayor.
Mayor Wynn, okay, our wonderful mayor. She's the one that's responsible for that. Question number 7, is the Planning Commission ever involved in budgetary matters of Tooele City?
No.
Nope.
Only
Planning Commission has
spending
nothing to do with money. Zero, zip, nada. Okay, that is entirely a city council responsibility. And number 8, what can the Planning Commission do if they feel they have not been presented enough information to make an informed decision on a project that may have a large impact on the city?
Table or continue.
You can table it, continue it until you get the information you need.
Request for the information we need.
Yep. I recall one particular subdivision, it's that 1 O'Clock Hill, just south of SR 36, where there was a lot of seismic and geologic problems. Planning Commission tabled that a couple of times to get the information they needed. So that's a valuable tool. You're not obligated to approve anything if you don't feel comfortable about it. So just always remember that. Don't feel bad about tabling an item. And then question number 9, why are planning commissioners appointed instead of elected to their positions?
So Chris, don't get beat up in the parking lot.
Is that your official answer?
It's as good as the one we were going to get.
It's basic and generic, but yeah.
It allows us to make decisions without having to worry about the political consequences.
Exactly. You guys can make hard decisions, not have to worry about getting voted out of office, okay? And then question number 10, are conditional use permits legislative or administrative duties of the Planning Commission?
Administrative.
They are administrative. Yep, you guys are the sole authority on conditional use permits. City Council is not involved in those. So you did well on your quiz. Congratulations. Hopefully you guys learned something tonight that you hadn't known before. I'm sure all of you are pretty familiar with all this because Jim gave it to you every year. But that should take care of our general powers and duties training. So I appreciate you. Appreciate what you do for the city. We'll be bringing another training session back to you, probably the bylaws of the Planning Commission, as we go over those. But thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Anybody got questions for Andrew before we let him go?
We are the most important because we're in 2 of these branches. If we can get ourselves in judicial, we can
Yeah,
take
then then we rule the world.
Also, I want to talk about some budget things we want to add. Some dinner like the council gets.
Yeah, a dinner.
I've had people smuggle dinner down.
All right, thank you for that, appreciate it. And number 8 on our agenda, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Please do.
We are adjourned. Thank you, Commissioner Proctor.